Hey, how's it going, everyone? Ethan Wells here, Associate Regional Director for Region 2. Just wanted to bring you all another video here today, and this one on the officer position of Crysophylos, and give you a little bit of a how-to and some of the tips and tricks that we at HQ have learned and understood throughout our different chapters that we visit and years on the road. So this video essentially is going to be a breakdown of how to be an effective budget manager and fund collector. The Chryso really is one of the most important roles that will make or break a successful chapter. So if you have a Chryso that's collecting money on time, that's making sure that we are collecting enough to pay out all the credits that we have, then the chapter will be in a good position come the end of the year. On the flip side of that, if you have a Chryso that doesn't really care about collecting money or doesn't create a successful budget, then the chapter essentially is not going to have enough money to do the things that it wants to do and maybe even operate into the future. So the Chryso's role is not just about counting money, right? But it's about planning for money that's coming in and planning for money that's going out. So a good example of what that looks like is, say, the Chryso, or we do elections here now. So let's say May 1st, 2020, we do elections, the new Chryso comes in. He should already be thinking about what he wants the budget or the account balance to look like come May 1st, 2021, when we do elections again, right? This is a position that is taken for at least a year, and can be taken further than that. But the Chryso coming in should already have an idea of what he wants his balance, what he wants his budget to look like come the end of his term. The Chryso also must have an understanding of, one of the most important things to have an understanding of is the fraternity's fee structure. So that goes into the different fees that the fraternity, the headquarters, charges every single year. And then on top of that, what the chapter needs for the local fees. So to go through the HQ fees, the chapter assessment fee, the conclave savings plan, the annual membership fee, the risk management fee, and the founders housing fee. Doing some math on that, for an average size chapter, if each person paid that off towards the chapter's fees every single year, then each man would owe approximately $450, depending on the size of the chapter, of course. So $450 per year, and then of course have an understanding of what chapter-based fees are needed. So whether that's some T-shirts, whether that's for any events for fundraising on campus, so the chapter needs to pay some money to get some food in, whatever the case may be, have an understanding of what those fees look like and what the chapter needs financially to add those on top of the HQ fees and say, okay, this is what each person should pay every single year. If each person pays this every single year, this is our operating budget. This is what we'll have. They also must have an understanding of new member fees, right? So each semester, hopefully we have a new member class coming in. Not only should they know what fees need to be paid by each new member, but when they are due. So essentially that's that $75 candidate fee, and then $225 initiate fee. So that the Chryso should be the one that's making sure that's being kept track of, working with the hegemon, working with other officers in the chapter to make sure these guys pay this, and we can get them their materials and then they get into the chapter. The Chryso must also have an understanding of the reality of finance charges and penalty fees for late or negligent payments. Obviously, these are some fees that we don't want to assess against a chapter at any time. But whereas, on one side of things, if the chapter pays the risk management fee early, right, we essentially give you a credit back. If there's 10 guys in a chapter who all pay their risk management fee by that October, or by that deadline, October 1st deadline, early bird deadline, then they get a credit back of $210, which will go towards whatever else they want to put it towards. That can almost cover all of your conclave savings plan for one semester. But again, on the flip side of that, if these fees aren't paid on time or paid early, then there will be finance charges and penalty fees. And that's to make sure that we collect the money that is owed, and we want to push to make sure that we get the money that's needed funded through, which is why it's important to have a successful budget. We get the money that's needed as early as possible. That way we don't have to worry about this later on down the road. So something else that the Chryso needs to be aware about are important deadlines. This should be number one in the back of your head, okay, this is due this time. I need to be working on this because this is coming up next. So here are important dates, and I'll run through this list so you have a basic understanding of those. So the first one to think about for the academic year, for the school year, is going to be the annual roster. So that's going to be on September 15th. And essentially what that is one of your HQ representatives, whether it's myself or another regional director or associate regional director, will call one of you all in the chapter, one of the leaders of the chapter, and do a roster with you. And that is us making sure what we have on our record on the module lines up with what actually the chapter has, because we don't want to be charging for people that aren't there anymore. And also we want to make sure that we're charging for everybody in the chapter. So, it doesn't seem like most of you guys are paying, and then there's one or two guys that are just getting by with not paying what is owed. So we do that roster, like I said, September 15th every single year. Something to keep in mind. Make sure everything's in order. If you need to have guys either through chapter court get rid of them or have them demit, make sure that paperwork is done beforehand, so we can do the roster process a lot easier and a lot quicker. Next important date is going to be the risk management fee early bird deadline. That's October 1st. So like I mentioned earlier, if you want to make sure that the chapter gets that credit back and you essentially get money that you didn't have coming in, get those fees paid off early, and the earlier the better. So between September 15th and October 1st is when we start sending out invoices for what's owed for the entire year, of course, after we get the roster done. So as soon as you get that invoice, pay that early bird fee off and have that extra credit to put towards something else. Next important date is going to be October 15th. So the three big things that happen for October 15th is going to be the IRS tax forms. So since we are a non-for-profit organization, each chapter, which is a subsidy of the organization as a whole, has to fill these out to keep that status, that non-exempt status. And then fall AMFs. So if you want to pay those all in full, or if you want to pay half of those, due October 15th. And then RMFs are due October 15th in full as well. Next important date is going to be October 31st. So you got your conclave savings plan and your chapter assessment fee and your founders housing fees, all due October 31st. And then, of course, spring deadlines, which are very similar to what the fall deadlines look like. You've got your March 1st, March 15th, and March 31st. Again, it all boils down to what you have left to pay. If you paid all of your AMFs, if you paid all of your RMFs in the fall, then you don't have to worry about it. Of course, there will always be the conclave savings plan each semester of $250. If you paid all of your chapter assessment fee, again, don't have to worry about it. But then founders housing fee as well. And then, of course, the last deadline to worry about or to think, to have in the back of your head is going to be that May 15th deadline. So that is when annual reports are due. This is just a report that essentially every chapter fills out every single year saying, hey, this is everything that we've done. This is what our module, our KRA scores look like. We're going to greenlight this. This looks good. Here you go. It's just a checklist. That's really what it comes down to, making sure that you guys have been doing the right things and staying successful. And it gives us that information and data to use as we move forward. So here's some important resources that I want to offer for the CRISOs that are out there. One of the biggest and most important is the year to glance calendar. That can be found at teak.org/year-to-glance. And essentially that's just a breakdown of every single date that I gave you, plus many, many more. What's coming up on these dates. That could be scholarship applications when they're due, leadership applications when they're due, international Teak Sweetheart applications when they're due. Have this calendar on you to make sure that you know and are wary of what's coming up next. So it always keeps you on your toes. The next thing is the official guide for officers and the CRISO position very specifically. So on teak.org/resources, if you ever have the time, if you ever are wondering or have a question about what your position entails, go to teak.org, go to resources, and then there's an entire guide for the CRISO position. A lot of this information that I'm giving you right now is in this guide. So the more that you can learn to be better at your craft, to be better at your position, the better off you and the chapter are going to be. And then in that same guide, in that same resource section, we have a sample budget. So it's essentially a breakdown of everything that comes in and everything that goes out. It's a little Excel sheet, very handy to use and have and constantly update throughout the year to make sure that you as the treasurer of the chapter are keeping track of the money that's coming in and money that's going out. So some important things to do or to remember. So something that I believe is a staple of the CRISO, somebody who's a good fit for that role, is always being able to budget for more than what they need for the year. And that doesn't mean having a huge excess surplus. That doesn't mean overcharging or doubling the member fees for the year. But there are times when things pop up that you didn't expect, or there's an event or something that you all want to do that wasn't budgeted for at the beginning of the year. I mean, that happens routinely every single year to every single chapter in some way, shape, or form. And whether that's huge or whether that's small, being able to budget for a little bit extra is going to go a long way at the end of the semester when people look back and say, hey, you know, fees were really manageable this year. I wasn't asked to pitch in a couple extra dollars more than what I was told I would have to pay every month or have to pay every single semester. So always having that little bit of surplus is going to put you guys in a better spot. And even if at the end of the year, you know, you guys don't use all of it, then you can either roll that over to next year and maybe have more opportunities to spend some money next year or pay off fees early next year. Or you guys could look at donating that to help philanthropy causes. Whatever you want to do with that extra money, again, it's all up to you guys, but having that extra money is going to go a lot farther than being in a deficit, you know, with 3 months left of the school year. Something else important to remember or to do is to have a team or have a group of people that are on your side to help push those collections. We all know there's a few guys in the chapter every single year, right, that are really adamant about not paying their dues, or maybe have something come up that doesn't allow them to pay every single month or semester on time. But having that group or people that support you around you to help push those is going to go a lot farther than just you always being the guy who's constantly nagging about, hey, I need you to pay this, I need you to pay this, I need you to pay this. Because eventually that's going to fall on deaf ears. You know, after the few first times of you saying that and getting no response or getting no movement, then, you know, it's gonna take somebody else pushing that a little bit further. So having those people is going to make your job a lot easier, first of all, and it's going to make you a lot more respected and have a better understanding of how those funds come in that position, just because it's not you pushing for it all the time. You know, something else to think about when it goes along with that, really, if one person isn't paying their fees, then the rest of the chapter is making up for that, right? Because that's being billed to the chapter every single year. We don't bill each member individually. We bill for each individual member, but we don't send them directly the bill. So if people aren't paying those fees, then the rest of the chapter are making up for that. And that may be dipping into that surplus you've hopefully built. So that's not a good fraternity, brother. That's not a good recipe for success. So having those people, again, that support you, around you, understand that, hey, this is what we're doing. If we're letting these guys slack, is going to make them more adamant to help you and support you in pushing those guys to make their payments. And then, of course, be willing to have difficult conversations about money. You know, use your best judgment to cut some slack if need be. A lot of times there are situations that arise. Maybe, you know, there's some at-home troubles. There's an unexpected payment that needs to be made. Use your best judgment and be able to have those conversations not only with the person who needs that help, but with other officers in the chapter and say, hey, you know, we may have to help this guy out. That's what good fraternity is. That's what being a good brother is. You know, be open to different situations. And of course, always know that, like, you have people that support you. And with that, you know, I'll finish off and say that the international headquarters and your regional staff are always here to support you and help you as well. If you have anything that you are concerned about, if you have any questions when it comes to this position, please reach out to us. I mean, a lot of us have either been in this position before as an undergraduate, or we've worked with so many different chapters throughout our time being on staff that we know the different ins and outs of the Chryso position and the treasurer position. So please do reach out. But other than that, guys, that's all I've got. I've given you these resources. I've given you us as a resource. Please use this and take this back to your chapters to operate at the fullest capacity with the best budget possible. And that's all I can ask. But other than that, thank you for joining, and I hope you all have a great day.